Hi, everyone. This is Nilesh here from SaasTribe. And I know this is a random session, but here we are. Hey, Wynne, how are you doing?
Hey, Nilesh. Good.
Excellent.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing great. I think we're going to talk a little bit about uh, metric, one single metric, which is so important to track in your business and everything related to that. So,
Mm-hmm. All right. So let's talk about it. So I know we are a community that loves to engage in discussion around tools and things like that. But
yes.
and that's great. I love my tools. I love LTDs and all that kind of stuff. The thing I wanted to talk about today was traction metrics. Traction metrics. So what
Wynne,
is that?
are
What's
you
it?
able to track the post real quick? I mean, are we still live?
Yeah, we're live. Yep.
Okay. Okay.
Typing in the comments there. There we go.
Okay. Okay. Excellent.
So, okay, let's give a bit of an overview, a quick overview for anyone who's thinking about listening to this today. I think that's helpful. So, I want to talk about Facebook in the early days. Before Facebook was hugely profitable, there was a time where Facebook made no money. And if you've ever seen the movie, I think it's The Social Network.
Yes.
Um,
Probably
in that
everyone
there was,
has seen it here, especially in our community.
yeah, great. Uh, So I want to talk about that movie because if you remember in that movie, there was, the two characters. There's Mark Zuckerberg, or the guy that represents Mark Zuckerberg, and then he had his offsider, who was a Hispanic guy who I think they were like best friends. He ultimately got burnt and pushed out of the business, but I guess he made money in the end. I think he made 150 odd million. But that movie kind of focuses on the time where they weren't making money, and there was a transition where they went from making no money to making money. Now, what is not told in that story is how they went about getting funding when they actually made no money. And I want to talk about that today because I think that's a really important part of the conversation for entrepreneurs, for anybody who's uh, trying to have some kind of success, even if you're not an entrepreneur. Maybe you're working for someone else and you're trying to help them to get growth, or you're trying to help to build their business. Maybe you're involved in marketing or sales somehow. Hey, Joe, how are you? Good
Hey,
to see
Joe.
you here.
Joe just got home. I actually messaged him. I said, well, we just scheduled a session, and if you would like to join, so Joe is going to be in the audience today.
Joe, the meme king, Marisic. Let's go NFTs.
We talked about NFTs as well today.
We did talk about NFTs.
Yes,
Really interesting combo. Joe, you're going to love what we're coming up with, man. I'm telling you. Anyway, so Facebook, traction metrics, how they got a valuation of, I think it was 110 million, whilst they made no money. So that makes no sense to people who don't understand the stuff. But when you look under the cover and you understand how they put together their pitch, and in fact, they really were valuable. Also today, I'm going to talk about Facebook ads and how businesses who remain successful today are using Facebook ads. Right, so a lot's changed since the iOS 14 updates, and people have been, hey Ankit,
Hey,
how are
Ankit,
you?
how are you?
I think today's conversation is right in your ballpark, actually, because we're going to be talking about customer lifetime value and customer journey. And specifically how bigger businesses are, how they track things, and how they're doing Facebook ads specifically. But it's not just Facebook ads; it's also Google ads and YouTube ads, and it's quite different, radically different from how smaller businesses do this. We're also going to be talking about something that's dear to my heart, which is data and analytics. And I'm going to tell you a story about a gentleman that I spoke with yesterday who has been responsible for doing this not once, but several times, or maybe maybe it's 2 or 3 times. Okay, so a few times. Taking businesses from being in the red, not making a profit, to being highly in the black, making 30% return on capital per year, which is big. When we're talking about enterprise size businesses going from being in the red to being in the black by 30% return on capital, massive, and taking them to being worth over $1 billion. Okay, so that's, in my opinion, you know what you're doing when you can do that with a business. And the business I was talking to him about today, he's been in that business, I think, for about a couple of years, and he's taken it from $10 million revenue to $50 million revenue, which is a big achievement in itself. And his goal is to take that from 50 to $500 million. I'm not going to mention his name, not going to mention the business, and I'm not going to mention the industry they're in for their privacy, because we've signed a non-disclosure agreement with them. Okay, so just to kind of like preface that. I also want to talk about some of the tools that you might be wanting to use right now for your analytics and tracking. And no, I'm not talking about Google Analytics. Yes, Google Analytics still is one of the best analytics tools that's out there, and it's free.
Yes.
And it's amazing. And if you set it up properly, this is the key. If you set up Google Analytics properly, it still is one of the very best tools. Despite all of the great analytics tools that have come through AppSumo lately. All right. So if you're still with me and that sounds interesting, great. Let's get on to it. And we might even have time to talk about NFTs and crypto and all that kind of stuff. It's Joe started it all off. We were on a call, I think it was a couple of weeks ago. Joe mentioned crypto and NFTs, and my brain perked up, and then I started Googling, and what do you know? I've created a whole spreadsheet comparing all the metrics and figuring out which ones are which. So,
yeah. And
anyway.
And that's something, we have been meaning to look into for a while, to see how we can use some of these software accounts if it can be converted into an NFT. So something which could be used as an asset, it will have a value, and then it can be freely traded, right? Something which we've been meaning to implement.
So interesting. Hey, Jason. All right, let's jump into it. So should I just bowl on in there? Now that preface, let's get into it. Cool. So if you guys have any questions, every few minutes or so, we'll stop and take your questions, maybe every 10 minutes.
Yeah. Joe's comment. Joe is saying today was actually playing around with Google banner ads being placed on an exact URL that is optimized for your keyword.
And I've got another book recommendation. Well, not actually book. This one's an actual Udemy course for you guys to check out today. So I'll give that at the end. This won't disappoint Jason, who's been bombarded by my book recommendations. And yes, I will talk about Ash Maria. I am actually Ash Maria in disguise, and I will be discussing positive feedback loops. Yes, scaling lean. Yes, we'll touch upon it. We won't dwell upon it. We won't thrust it and push it and ram it down people's throats. Okay, cool. Let's get into it. So for those of you who don't know, Facebook, even before they were making any money, they were still highly successful. So Facebook was one of those meteoric rises. They started off as really a joke, a bit of an experiment at Harvard, and it was really a copy of Hot or Not. So I don't know if you've ever checked out Hot or Not. I don't even know if they're still available. You place a plus or a minus or a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Are they hot? Thumbs up. Thumbs down. You get the idea. So Facebook was really kind of a bit of a piss take on that, but it was for Harvard, for Harvard. And it just kind of took off. The growth was rather organic, and it went from one campus to the next. Started with not Harvard or Stanford. Was it Harvard? Anyway, got that part right. So they found themselves in the unusual position of being successful. They had this business that was just taken off, and I mean the yearly server costs might have been a few $1,000s, but that was really about the size of Facebook. It had many users. I think millions of users by that point. But they hadn't turned over a single dime. And I don't know if you remember in the movie Social Network, Eduardo, I think it's Eduardo, Hispanic guy.
Yes.
His job was to find a profitable business model. That was his role in the business. He was unable to do that, and every idea he came up with, and there was, recall in the movie, there was always this friction between the two. I think it was I'm going to call him Eduardo. That's a great name, Eduardo. Sorry, dude. Whatever your name is, if I've got it wrong.
Saverin.
Eduardo.
Saverin. Yeah.
Sorry, it was
Eduardo Saverin. Yes.
Severin. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So Eduardo's role was to raise money, and he was continually frustrated because nothing he suggested was taken on board by what's his name, Zuckerberg, and they eventually parted ways. Now, what happened was Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg were actually able to raise funds, and their first seed funding came from, I think it was Microsoft. Now, here's how it went down. How did they get, I think it was roughly $10 million or maybe $11 million funding for their first round funding? How did they manage to get funding when they had no revenue, right? Well, the answer is they came up with a traction metric. Okay, scaling lean. Ash Maria, read the book. I've mentioned it probably 10 times now. Okay, so that's the only time I'm going to mention Ash Maria in this conversation, or scaling lean. Okay, so in that book, we're told to come up with a traction metric, which is what Mark Zuckerberg did. And he used the two analogs. So analog meaning similar businesses. And the two closest businesses that they could find at the time was MySpace and Friendster. And what they did was they looked at a metric that's now called MAPU or APU. It basically means active use. It's a kind of a metric that gives you an indication about the active users, how often they've been active, how long they've been active. And it really is a great engagement measurement. And these days, that's a really common measurement. Back then, when Facebook first started using this, hi Aditya, back then, nobody used, well, I don't know if nobody used it, but very few people were using this metric. It wasn't common anyway. And Facebook figured out that this was worth measuring because it gave them an idea of the monetizable engagement that they had on their platform, right? So this is their traction metric. I'm not suggesting you use this traction metric. We're going to get to that in a moment. And each business will be different. Each situation will be different. But you must be able to find that metric. And the definition of a good traction metric is that it accurately predicts future revenue, right? So for you, it may not be revenue. If you're not running your own business, then it may not be revenue, but it accurately predicts future success, right? So you have to hunt for that metric and find it. And the definition of it, when you find it, is that it accurately predicts future income, right? And so for Facebook, they track their MAPU, MARPU. They track that much closer than they do their revenue, right? And I'm going to talk about in a moment why this is so important for Facebook specifically and businesses like Facebook, which employ a network effect. And also, I just want to put that as a side. Now back to Facebook. So they use that metric, and then they said, okay, what is the MAPU of of Friendster, and what's the MAPU of MySpace, right? And they calculated that, and then they said, okay, what is their income? What's their revenue, right? So then they said, okay, their revenue is this much, and this is their MAPU, and then they figured out the same for both of those businesses, and they said, okay, our MAPU is this, therefore our revenue should be that, and then the multiple for businesses like ours in this space is whatever it is. So let's say it's 10, a multiple of 10. So whatever your annual revenue is, you multiply it by 10 or 20. Okay, so whatever that fair estimation is. And then they came up with a figure, they put that into a proposal, and then they went to Microsoft and they pitched that, and they immediately got funding. There was no resistance to the figure that they asked for. And that's how they got their initial figure, their initial money. And they were able to then pay themselves and pay their team. and use that to build to what Facebook is today, which is the juggernaut of a social network. There's things that we love about Facebook, but there's also things we hate about it. But anyway, to this day, they still track Mapu as one of their top, if not their top metric, right? And anyway, so getting back to the gentleman that I spoke with yesterday, what was really interesting about that conversation is that he was saying that in the first, however, handful of businesses that he helped to really get these breakthrough successes, he always found three factors, right? Three factors. I won't tell you, I can't tell you what those are because I'll be giving away his business, those businesses that he helped and who he is. And these factors aren't obvious. This is the kind of whole thing I want to say to you. Like, it's not revenue, not tracking revenue. Okay, revenue is like a secondary effect. If you get this if you get these metrics right, especially this traction metric, which if you get this right, you will not only see where you're going wrong, you'll see how to build your business, because every decision you make from that point onwards becomes a decision about is it building my traction metric, is it harming my traction metric, or is it making it better? So
wait, just 1 second here. I'm going to show the URL. So guys, in case if you give permission to this URL posted here in the comments, then we can see your profile picture and then your name, right? So otherwise we just see it as a Facebook user. So if you give permission to restream, then we can see who's making the comment. Just makes it easy for us to track. Thank you. Go ahead.
Cool.
Yeah.
So does that make sense? Does that make sense so far? We talked about tracking metrics. We talked about figuring out something that you can track that can predict your future success. Does that all make sense?
Absolutely does make a lot of sense. I mean, those are things which you need to track, and then based on that, there is a lot of things which you determine what's going to work and what's not going to work, right? So
right, and that might sound easy. Like if you're in a business like Facebook, then obviously tracking Mapu would make a lot of sense. One of the things that Nilesh and I realized that for this group, one of the things that we need to track is probably Mapu, because in a similar way, and I'll tell you this, the reason why groups are so successful on Facebook is because Facebook has figured out that the single biggest feedback loop, there you go, I can use that word at least once in this podcast, the biggest and strongest feedback loop that they have running on Facebook is groups, right? Is groups. That's why groups grow so phenomenally quickly, especially ones that are run properly. And kind of as an aside, that's one of the reasons why Nilesh, you and I have been talking about, okay, we've got to cut down on the spam that's in the group. We've got to make sure that people are providing value. And then some people got upset about that, and they went and started posting false things on other groups, which is, they blatantly weren't true. But
and that's I mean, I can see that why they would get upset, right? But it was nothing on our end. Like, we had requested them that cut down some of that spam, right? So if they didn't, that's okay. We didn't do anything drastic, right? So, but they went all crazy, which has a lot.
They went crazy. It's like basically defamation with no actual cause. It's like, what are you talking about, you idiots? But anyway,
but anyway, I mean, it has allowed us to evolve. Actually, we have a separate community for all trading of apps, and then for this community, which we have other plans for, which allow us to grow, and people can find it a lot more valuable rather than seeing the same few people posting the same thing, everything again and again, and that's all you see in your feed, like every single day for the last week. So it did not make any sense. Now, it might actually make sense. it actually might make sense for a lot of these people because they didn't have anything else to offer, which is okay. But I mean, we have a thriving community, and we can't hold everyone else hostage because of such behavior. So we appreciate.
So just as an aside, guys, I mean,
Yes.
Nilesh is the one that copped the brunt of this. I didn't, so I'm thankful of that. And that's because Nilesh is really the front face of our group. But I'm in agreement with Nilesh and what he did, and and I want to kind of touch upon this. This is where it's relevant to if you're doing any advertising or any marketing in general, right? One thing you have to understand about those platforms, and I'm just going to keep the conversation to Facebook today because it's easier. Okay. And it goes back to this traction.
Hey,
metric.
Alston, how are you?
Hey, Alston, how are you, man? Good to see you here.
Yes, we were just talking about Alston today as well. We're going to invite Alston on our live stream.
You're awesome,
do that. Yes, we got to do that. I've been talking to Alston as well, actually. So, hopefully by this weekend, or we'll have something scheduled with early next week with Alston, right? So, yes.
Okay, so getting back to a topic about attraction metric. Traction, TRACTION, not attraction, but traction. Something that predicts, and the definition of traction metric is something that predicts your future revenue. Now, I want to talk about behaviors that Facebook clamps down on and penalizes, right? And so today's topic was kind of like related to Facebook ads, and I want to talk about that. So there's a lot of great tools that have come through AppSumo. We've been phenomenally lucky. I was lucky enough to get on that tool called Reveal Bot.
Yeah, Reveal Bot. Yeah.
Anyway, so that does automations. A lot of these automations are already available in Facebook, but Reveal Bot just makes them easier, and they're more sophisticated, and you can do them they're just better. You don't necessarily need that tool. That was one of the gems that you should have gotten if you were in Facebook ads. There's been another tool that's come through recently called Ad You Need. And that I thought on the surface of it, I thought it was very similar to Madgix, MADGICX. Very expensive tool. If you're an agency, last year and the year before, you definitely would have gotten that tool because it would have improved your profitability. But I'm going to tell you right now that if you're using those kind of tools like Magix and Ad You Need, and I'm not sure about Scalify, I haven't looked at Scalify closely enough, but if it's anything like Magix, I'm going to tell you today that you're wasting your time, right? Because the game has changed radically. And the reason I can tell you this with a hand on heart is because I am seeing the inside of people's Facebook and ad accounts in general because of the data and analytics stuff I'm doing. I'm not advertising at the moment. I'm not doing, as an FYI, I'm not telling you that I'm like the guy to listen to when it comes to Facebook ads and Google ads. There's better people out there than me. But I am telling you from the perspective of somebody who looks at people's accounts and understands what they're doing and knows and sees what they're doing. And I'm going to share some of that with you today without giving away the specifics of those people's accounts. Okay, so go back to Facebook. Sorry. Alston, I'm a minimalist. I've had a lot of books and I just throw them away. Why do I throw them away? Because most of them I don't ever read again, right? So I'm not. I gotta either come up with a plain background or put more books on my shelf. But I read a book, and if it's not a book that I'll read over and over and over again, it doesn't end up on that shelf. So there you go. I should probably go to some interesting place that sells knickknacks and put like ornaments or stuff up there. But I've got a very bare office. I don't have any distractions. Maybe pot plants would be a great idea. Okay, so back to Facebook specifically, but this applies to all of the big networks like Google and YouTube and that type of thing. So Facebook is in the business of monetizing.
Sorry, Wynne. What he's saying is, or if we can only fill our physical shelves with LTDs, then it will be full of it. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to create a background, right, Wynne, with a green screen for you. right? And we'll create a shelf with all the lifetime deals which you have, like as books,
There you go.
Restream, Ecamm, and all that, right? So there we go.
Yeah.
Alston, thank you for the idea. We'll do that, right? We'll have that, create that background.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I got an endless list of books. The truth is, I read a lot of my books on Audible as well. Maybe that's one post I could put up as a post on the different books that I recommend. I mean, there's some doozies, man. There's so much wisdom in books. We're so lucky these days. We don't have a lot of time to read books and everything. I listen to a lot of my books on Audible. There is one recommendation I'm going to make today for a book, and it's I haven't read it yet, funnily enough, but I'm going to get to that. I'll talk about that in a moment. Anyway, okay, so back to Facebook. They penalize certain behaviors and they reward certain behaviors that people make, whether you're an advertiser or a user or you're a group owner, doesn't matter. They have one of the world's most sophisticated machine learning algorithms, and they have one of the world's two greatest machine learning godfathers. LeCun is his last name. I forget his name. Jan LeCun. So he's the head of Facebook, or he has been spearheading Facebook's machine learning algorithm for years. He's incredibly smart, and Facebook has tens of thousands of factors that they cross-reference and they use as parameters, right? So they can see with great clarity what behaviors are increasing engagement and which ones don't, right? So when they make a UI or UX change, a whole bunch of people complain, but you know this that Facebook has tested that, and their machine learning model tells them with clarity that change is making things better. Okay, so why this is important? If you run a group, right, and your group is not growing, that's because you are not agreeing with Facebook's machine learning algorithm that's predicting their traction metric. Remember, traction metric is what predicts their future revenue. And if you're doing something on their platform that's driving their engagement down, they're going to do one of three things. They're going to either ban your account, your personal account, they're going to ban your ad account if you're doing ads, or they're going to make sure that your group does not grow. They're going to make sure that your stuff doesn't show. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. It's interesting that we are talking about this because I was on a stream with Laurel the other day, and she had a lot of similar things to say around communities and how they are tracking every single metric and through machine learning. And if you are doing something wrong, then obviously, it's gonna affect your Facebook group, or if it's gonna affect your page or something of that sort, right? For sure, yes.
So one thing I'm highly aware of, because I have done a significant amount of Facebook advertising and Google advertising over the years, I'm very nervous about having accounts banned. Right? It's a perennial problem with Facebook ads, especially. Very common. Once you get over the $3,000 a day mark with spend, that your account will get banned. Okay, and there's been a number of theories over the years about why this is. One recent one was, okay, if you're because Mark Zuckerberg and Sandberg are liberal leaning politics, anything that's non-liberal leaning, let's say that you talk about something that's a little bit taboo, your account will get banned. Right. So if you do this in a personal context, your account will get banned. I have seen some anecdotal evidence for that. So if you are doing a bunch of political statements on your personal feed, don't stop doing it. Like, Facebook is not the place to do it. Why? Because your ad account will get banned, probably. Well, there's at least I've seen enough of these instances where that's happening. Okay, here's a second theory for you. And this is something that I've just been educated about, right? This is like within the last week. I forget who told me. It's like I get so much information going on my head. Hey, Ruhani, how are you?
Hey, Rouhani, how are you? We talked about Rouhani today as well.
Mm-hmm.
Conversation. All good things, of
True.
course. Yes.
So I have another theory for you about why Facebook ad accounts get banned on a regular basis, especially for those who, like I said, doing over $1,000 or $3,000 a day. You're really getting the attention of the algorithm at that part. Okay, so here's a clue for you. It comes back to the traction metric. If your ads are reducing that MAPU engagement metric for Facebook, and now you're doing it at a rate of several $1,000s a day, you're harming the experience of hundreds of thousands of people. And Facebook will ban your account without warning. And this happens so often. I kid you not. Some of the accounts that I get to see into, they're releasing a new pixel probably every few days. They get one pixel banned, and then they launch another one banned, and then they get another one banned. Like that's at the rate at what they're just chewing through these things, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I want to go back to talking about that guy, the secret guy that I can't talk about because we're under an NDA, non-disclosure agreement. Why does any of this matter? Why does any of this matter? Well, it matters. It matters because most people here are in some kind of business. They're either running a business for themselves or they're doing some kind of growth activity for someone else, right? Believe it or not, okay, there's so many factors, right, to tracking your business, whether it's hiring staff, it's compliance with privacy and compliance in general, it's advertising, it's sales, it's your product. I mean, there's literally dozens and dozens of things that you could be doing and tracking. But I'm here to tell you that in any business, there's likely less than the digits on my hand that if you knew what those things were, they were strong predictors of your success or failure. And this gentleman that I was speaking to was telling me flat out that in every business that he goes into, he finds typically three strong predictors of whether that business is succeeding and failing. And if they simply address those three things, believe it or not, three things, their businesses would explode. I know that sounds like a hype train. I can't tell you um, how silly that sounds. Just three things. If you're able to find those three things in your business, and if you listen to Ash Maruya, he says of those three things, one of them will be your traction metric and will predict your future revenue. If you're able to find those three things and track them and measure them, and as Peter Drucker says, what gets measured gets improved. However, the problem with that, right, and this is the thing that I expressed to this gentleman. I said the problem with that is that those three things are almost certainly invisible to us mere mortals. How do you, and I'm going to call this guy John. Okay, I've got to give this guy a name. I can't keep on saying this secret person. I said to John, which is not his actual name, how do you find those three things? Because I don't know about you guys, but for me, I've been in different marketing consulting roles in the past, and I've been incredibly frustrated when I've been unable to get the result for that business, right? And it comes down to having the ability to almost have like X-ray vision to see these three factors. And like I said, like out of the three, there'll be one that supersedes all of the rest, and that one will be your traction metric. Okay, so I'm about to make a recommendation today. I had a friend who, let me tell you a quick story. This gentleman, I met him at a creativity conference here in New Zealand. He's a professor at Stanford Design School, one of the top design schools in the world. He's in his 80s now, I believe. Bruce Corson. You can Google Bruce Corson, spelled Corson, and he teaches a framework called problem naming. Unfortunately, I think Bruce might have died. I haven't heard of him. I haven't heard him in the last year. Haven't been able to get hold of him. So I do wonder if he may have passed away from COVID. I really hope that he hasn't. But you may be able to find some of his resources out there. However, speaking to John yesterday, I was really excited because he recommended another person, another author. This woman's a lot younger. I think she's in her 30s. And her name, here's the one book. Every time you listen to me speak, you're always going to get a book recommendation or or some kind of resource recommendation. Okay, so her name is Annette, Annette, Pren, Prenh. Oh no, Prehn. And she has a free course on Udemy. So go check it out. It's a free course. And then she's got a paid one that's like $13. So just get the free one and the paid one at the same time. Okay, awesome. She's called her framework something different, but the entire idea behind it is about breaking through your own biased thinking. It's a framework for breaking through your own biased thinking so that you can see these almost invisible levers that are happening in your business or in your employment or whatever. In Bruce's framework, and why I like to talk about problems is because it's much more helpful to talk about a problem than it is to talk about a solution. So in Bruce Corson's framework, he talked about problem naming, right? So you'd say, okay, what's the problem that's stopping my business from exploding today? And you'd come up with different hypotheses about what that is. And a number of the clients that would come to him would come, asking him to solve the problem. And you go, well, how do you know that is the actual problem? And so the 80% of the consulting that he would do with clients was actually around the framing of what the problem was or could be, right? I'll give you an analogy. He's an architect, hence why he's professor at the design school. And he was asked to come and consult on how to get the birds. Basically, what happened was they had this this place where you could eat your food, and it had a cover on it, right? And so they had a problem with the birds sitting up in the pigeons sitting up in the rafters and then shitting down on the food, and it was not very hygienic. So so we think the problem is pigeons sitting up in the rafters shitting on the food. So that's the definition of the problem. I'll give you an example of this, right? So what they did is they said, okay, if that's the problem, then what's the natural conclusion? Well, we'll put up some some grid wire. The grid was roughly about this wide to stop pigeons getting up there. So they put this grid wire that was like square grid with this kind of space, so the pigeons couldn't get through. They put this up across the whole ceiling. Great, it fixed the problem. Pigeons did stop climbing up there and shitting on food. But what happened was it created the pigeons. They didn't realize that the pigeons were frightening away the sparrows. So because the sparrows had no one to hide away from, they had this explosion of sparrows that went up into the ceiling. And so where they had a minor kind of annoyance before, they had this diabolical problem, like literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these sparrows up in that ceiling. So now they had a real problem. Okay, so yes. Anyway, the way that they eventually solved it was they realized that the actual problem was not so much pigeons being able to get up there. It was pigeons and any birds in general being able to perch. So then they had those little things with little spikes on them that they put on all of the rafters. They made these little spikes that made it impossible for the birds to actually sit there for any period of time because they have these little spiky things sticking up. And that's a good example of being able to define the problem properly and then coming up with an elegant solution. Anyway, do you want to say something, Nilesh?
Yeah. I just want to give a hi to Tom here. Tom is joining us on YouTube. So,
Oh, wow.
So hi, Tom. Thanks for joining on YouTube. We're not responding to comments on YouTube yet, but if you want to join our Facebook community, I think the link is there in our channel. You're welcome to join anytime, and welcome. Thanks for tuning in live. Yes.
Awesome. Hey, Tom. So, I mean, that's a really kind of an innocent example, but Bruce would get pulled into these high level, like multi-billion-dollar organizations to consult on this stuff, and the decisions that they're trying to solve, you just multiply that example times 1,000, and now you're talking about big money. And so what these organizations are finding by employing Bruce's framework, and now I've put you onto Annette Pren, I really believe this kind of style of thinking, being able to break through our biases about what we think the problems are and what we think are actually driving our businesses, we need to get a handle on these almost invisible. They're tiny. They look tiny. These little levers look tiny and they look so innocent. But I can tell you that those things. Here's the thing, right? Can I talk about the feedback loop thing? Okay, so has everyone here heard about 80-20 principle, Pareto principle? Has everyone here heard about Pareto principle? P-R-E-T-O.
Yes.
Pretty sure everyone. Everyone here is clever. Everyone who's in the comments is clever. I already know that. But do you know why the Pareto principle works? The principle itself works because of positive feedback loops. They create this runaway loop that creates these crazy distributions, right? Where the few in the population are responsible for the massive amount of effects that we're seeing, right? So we see this in wealth distribution. We see this in the original Pareto distribution, which was to do with peas and pods. He accidentally discovered that 20% of the pea pods, the pods in his garden, held most of the peas, and it made no sense to him. He was really surprised by this. And in fact, it's a very surprising thing to find in general, but it's why we have like 1% of the world's population owns like something crazy like 50% of the world's wealth. True stat. It's actually way more extreme distribution than what you think is intuitively thinks, right? So if you what this tells us about the Pareto principle is that it's actually fractal, meaning that you can take an 80-20 cut of a population, meaning you can take a 20% cut, and you can be sure that within that 20% cut, as long as you took the top 20%, that 20% cut would hold 80% of the value, meaning that if you had a population of 100 salespeople, 20% of the salespeople would be making 80% of the sales, and you could quite happily let go of the other 80% and save on your money and make more money in general. But what most people don't realize is that the 80-20 principle is a fractal power law, meaning that you can keep on taking a 20% cut of that 20% cut, which means that you could take, the top 4% of earners, and they would be earning 64% of the sales. Okay, this is mind-blowing for me. And you could take another 80-20 cut of that top 4% of earners to come up with the top 0.8%. And they would be responsible for 51% of the sales, right? So this is fractal, and you could carry on and on and on. If you had a big enough population, this law holds up. Meaning that in your organization, in your business, in your efforts, in whatever you're doing, whether it's Facebook ads, whether it's growing a community, whether it's growing an agency, whether it's whatever it is, there will be these almost invisible levers that are driving everything, right? And as I've said, like there's top 4% drives 64%, top 1% drives 50%. And this comes back to the traction metric. That top 1% is your traction metric. How do you find it? I don't have the expertise, quite frankly, to tell you how to go about doing this. Bruce Corson, he's dead, probably. hopefully he's not dead. But definitely check out Annette Pren's stuff. Annette, and her last name is Prehn. Find her free course on Udemy. I've been told it's very, very similar to the conceptual thinking that I've been talking about with Bruce Corson. So please go and check that out. There's a free course you can get there. And the paid one, I think, is like $13 US or something crazy cheap like that. Anyway, worth checking out for this kind of thinking. So the point I'm trying to get to here is that you must be able to identify those invisible levers. If you don't, then no matter what you do in your business, you'll be spinning your wheels and trying to figure out why it is that you're wasting so much time and not getting anywhere, right? So that's really the short and sweet of it when it comes to today's thing. Now, let me go back to, you want to say anything so far? Nilesh, I see you dropped a link in there.
Yeah, no, I was just dropping Annette Prince's Udemy course link. But I mean, that's in every scenario, right? I mean, especially like, you go into sales, you're into services, I mean, professional services. 80% of your business is coming from 20% of your customers. And if you look at that 20% of the customers and you take like, a factor of the, I mean, it's basically, you will have that reflect that, what some of your top customers are giving you. So as long as you focus on them, that's where most of that services and everything is, like any business, right? I mean, it's applicable really into anything if you look at it closely.
Right. And in actual fact, Jenny just said, Good to Great, a book by James Collins. Another favorite book of mine. Really, really great book, especially if you're looking at hiring people in your team. I mean, one of the greatest concepts in that, thanks, Jenny, for reminding me. So this is the second book recommendation today. Definitely get that book. He talks about getting the right people on the bus. He doesn't talk about their expertise or the qualifications or the university or any of that crap. He talks about characters that are a little harder to define, but emotional intelligence, resourcefulness, resilience, etc., etc., etc. If you find the right people with the right attitude, oh my God, you can really love your business. Really powerful book to read. But that was like one of the things that I came away with from that book. One of my key conclusions was a lot of this is about getting the right people around you. A lot of it is, which is why I'm so thankful to be working with Nilesh on this project on SaasTribe, and Alex, a guy called Alex that I'm working with on the data analytics project. I'm so big on that now that almost the income and revenue at the beginning is a secondary thing, because if you hit revenue, I've been in a business that's been literally doubling every month, crazy, right? But the guy I partnered with, he had, in my opinion, had character flaws. I won't say who he is, but getting the right people around you, man, is so critical. Yes, I agree with you, Jenny. Thanks for that. Built to Last. Yes. Who made that comment? Because that was the other book that came before. Ankit. Yeah. That's another great book. Dudes, we should be sharing our book list with each other. Honestly, it's such a powerful exercise to do, I think. Okay, so anyway, getting back to analytics and stuff, I want to tie this into analytics a little bit, and probably ads, where the rubber hits the road. So really look at Annette Pren's stuff. I haven't read it myself. I'm going through it. I've been told it's like Bruce Corson stuff, and I can vouch for that kind of thinking. Unbelievable. Applying creativity to finding what's called a better quality problem, a better defined problem. Because once you do that, you're able to come up with much more elegant solutions. And elegance is defined as the outcome that you achieve divided by the energy you have to invest in order to achieve that outcome. Okay, so elegance, E, big E, is equal to outcome, O, divided by energy, little e, right? Just kind of like write that down on a piece of paper, because that one comment, that one idea there is mind-blowing, right? What we're all trying to do is trying to achieve elegance in our lives, all right? If we could work an hour a day and have $1 million, wouldn't that be great? That's elegance, right? So how do you do that? So still trying to figure that out. Okay, So I want to kind of like tie this back to rubber hits the road kind of stuff with Facebook ads, right? And I want to touch upon Facebook ads because most people are doing that rather than Google ads. By the way, are harder to do. They're harder to get your head around, but they are actually more robust to the whole privacy stuff that's hitting the fan at the moment. And I wanted to touch upon one of the conversations that I wanted to weave into this today is how, when I'm looking over analytics accounts, I get to see how people do their Facebook ads and their Google ads. I've done a lot of advertising, digital advertising in my life and stuff like that, but not at the scale of the clients that I'm looking at their accounts in. I'm just going to tell you that honestly. And so there's some big insights that I want to share with you. Number one, most of these big accounts don't run ads like you and I used to back in the day, back in smaller businesses. Like, so in a smaller account, right? This is the narrative. This is what you hear. Okay, you got to set up your tracking. Great, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm a tracking guy, so yes, obviously you have to set up your tracking. You have to define who your customer audience is, your avatar. How old are they, where they live, what they're interested in. And then you got to like use precise interests. You got to target them on different devices, and you got to do all of that crap. And what happens? Does anyone know what happens when you do Facebook ads? You initially you set your objective, whether it's for cost per lead or cost per purchase, or if you're even more sophisticated, you'll be reporting on customer lifetime value back to Facebook, and then you'll be optimizing for that. That's somewhat broken now with the privacy stuff, but it still kind of works. Anyway, so that's kind of how people do it. But then what happens is you do your initial rounds of testing, you get a winning ad, and then what happens? And within a week, your ad burns out. And then you go through the process again, and it's a very frustrating process. Well, I'm going to tell you that the bigger advertisers who are having extraordinary success with their ads don't do it. Don't do any of that. They don't do that. That's not how they work. Okay, they run their accounts exactly differently from smaller advertisers. Okay, so the first thing that they do, the bigger advertisers, this is a surprise to most people. They don't use tools like Ads You Need or Magix. They keep their targeting completely broad. They might go, okay, we're dealing with women, and they're in Australia, or they might be in the US, and that's about as much targeting as they do. They might go as far as saying how old they are, but that's about it, right? This is the surprise for most people. Yes, they have good tracking. They have good tracking set up, but their targeting in their ads is very, very, very broad. In fact, I might even have gone too specific for their ads. And yes, retargeted ads work, but I'll touch upon that too. 95% of the success in your ads, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Google, whether it's YouTube, are you ready for this? 95%. Okay, this is like the 80-20 rule on steroids. 95%. Can anyone guess? Can I get a few guesses in the comments there? What 95% of the success is dependent on this one activity. Any guesses? I've already told you that it's not the targeting, so it would be kind of silly if you said that. So don't say that. Yes, broad targeting is important, but it's not that. Okay, no guesses. Nobody wants to stick their neck out. That's okay.
On your copy?
Yes, partly. It's the creative. The creative.
Yes.
The creative is the combination of your on Facebook at least. It's either your image or your video, either one. Yeah. Some kind of visual medium. So
there you go. Ankit has it.
Ankit got it. A+ for Ankit. 95% of your success in digital advertising is your creative, right? And obviously this has to understand the psychology behind your ideal customer and all that stuff. I'm not saying that's not important. But there is a statistic, and I think it's somewhere in the vicinity of successful advertisers on Facebook and Google test roughly 15 times more creatives on average than their unsuccessful counterparts, right? So that is the one activity, right? And we talked about like little levers that drive your business. Now, when it comes to Facebook ads or Google ads or YouTube ads, they all have different ways of doing things, but they're roughly equivalent. They all have different approaches. But this is a truism. Your success in any of these on any of these networks will depend on split testing like crazy, split testing your images, and the images are a disproportionate predictor on Facebook. On Google search, obviously you don't have images. On YouTube, obviously you've got a video, short form video. But it's the creative. Overall, it's the creative. Okay, so so therefore, and one thing that really surprised me was how these bigger accounts are actually optimizing. So in most small campaigns that I've looked at, you'll optimize by the lead. Optimize for the lead, for the opt-in, for the email opt-in. You'll optimize if you're doing e-commerce. You'll optimize for the purchase event. If you're a success coach, you might be optimizing for the event booking, scheduling an event. Or if you're a consultant, you might be optimizing for the scheduled call, right? So these are all really obvious things, and machine learning is really smart at picking up on this stuff. So one of the things that's really interesting to me is how these bigger organizations, and I'm talking about multi-billion. I'm not managing any multi-billion-dollar accounts. So let me just be clear on that. But I was talking with this gentleman, and he was saying that on these multi-billion-dollar accounts, they were taking a branding approach. They were optimizing for the view. They weren't optimizing for the purchase, for the lead, for the schedule, for any of that. They were optimizing for the view. And they were allowing Facebook's machine learning and the combination of machine learning and their creative to do the heavy lifting. And why is that important? Okay, it goes back to what I was saying a little bit earlier. What I find happens when you do what's called pre-optimization, if you don't do enough split testing with your creative up front, what happens is as soon as you go to then optimize that for the lead or for the purchase, your ad burns out. Takes a few days, might take a week, might take 2 weeks, might take a month, but it burns out pretty quick, right? If you're lucky, it lasts a month, maybe 2. The reason that happens is because your ads have been pre-optimized. The reason that happens is because Facebook's machine learning is so clever at figuring out that tiny little portion of the population that will love your ad. And it just goes and shows it to all of them, right? And then it burns all of that audience out, and then that's all that's left. And then Facebook's got no choice then but then to start showing it to bigger and bigger audiences. The only problem is those bigger and bigger audiences don't resonate with your creative. And that's why 95% of your work must be done with the creative up front before you do any optimization. And I mean that hand on heart, keeping it broad and using no actual target. Your target is really just a branding effect. And that's how some of the biggest accounts in the world in Facebook still remain profitable, if not more profitable today, because their strategy has not changed. I know this sounds like horse shit for anybody who's done a lot of Facebook ads. This was, for me, was real surprise.
When there's a comment here from Tom is saying how to write R if the source is reliable and NR if it is non-reliable.
Sorry, my counter argument. So which one are we talking about? How to write R in the source if the source is reliable and NR if it's non-reliable. What does that mean?
I'm not sure.
How to write R if the source is reliable and
NR. Tom, can you elaborate a little bit on that, and then we can come back to you.
Okay, cool. Ankit's coming back with another one. He's Ankit saying your offer ad creative. Add creative. Yeah, and obviously there's more to it than that. Obviously, and obviously you have to have an offer that's working, and obviously there's you have to have a funnel that's working and landing pages that are working, and obviously one of the big parts of this is the offer. I mean, that's a huge part. I mean, keep it simple, stupid. Offer has to be like one of the most important parts of all of this, obviously. But when it comes to digital advertising success with your campaigns, if you have a working offer, what I'm talking about is if you already have a working offer, that's another conversation. How do you get to a working offer? Don't get me started. This is a whole other thought process. But if you already have a working offer and you're expanding into the digital ad space and you're running into this issue where your ads are continually burning out and you're getting frustrated because you're having to keep on relaunching the same campaign. Here's one of the hacks that we used to do: is take the same campaign that's burnt out and then relaunch it 5 times, let it run, and then kill the ones that aren't working, and then just keep running the one that now has some fresh life to it. Oh God, I'm glad those days are over for me. Yeah, okay. So let's talk about Jenny. That's push marketing, which is harder than people who are actually looking for you on Google. Well, there's different ways of doing all of this, Jenny. There's different approaches. There's push and there's pull marketing. And I'm not rigid on one way of doing things. My way of doing marketing, this is a crack up for you. Like, we just landed a client that I believe is going to be a disruptor to a big industry, right? And I literally had like 50 views on this video on YouTube. I told you my sophistication on content marketing is like so stupid these days. I'll just put up a video with a headline on it, and I won't even bother adding tags or any content or anything like that. And then I just let it run. And this video literally got like 50 views, and we just landed a pretty significant client off that video. It's crazy. So don't, when you're with your SEO strategies and stuff like that, don't be too biased when it comes to trying to get like millions of views or anything crazy like that. Anyway, so Ankit said another counter argument was to this would be small businesses usually do not have the spending volume to reach algorithmic optimization at scale, because to reach that level of optimization, you have to feed the algorithm data, which means more impressions. And I agree with you, Ankit. Here's the threshold. I believe I had this in-depth discussion with somebody I know and trust who's in my marketing mastermind, who does a lot of Facebook ads and is using the approach that I'm talking about. I believe that threshold is around about $5,000 per month. If you're not able to reach that, don't even try. Just quit. Just do something else. Just go get a job, something else. Don't bother with Facebook ads. It's not worth it. I truly don't believe you can, like you say, truly don't believe you can train the algorithm properly with any less data than that. I know this sounds snobby. I know this sounds elitist. I know this sounds somewhat dismissive, but I believe it to be true. Still not sure what you're talking about there, Tom Valarius. If you can please do a follow-up comment there.
Yeah, I'm a bit lost there as well. But Wilson's saying
yeah.
I'm more used to Facebook ads.
Facebook is definitely more user-friendly, but if you want to have more profitability in your business, it depends, right? If you're doing business to business, believe it or not, Facebook is better. If you're doing business to consumer, YouTube is better. I know that there is the technical jump of having to make videos, figuring that, I'm listening to kind of like Joe and Jenny with this kind of stuff, because they're the ones that are playing around with those tools like Pictory and stuff like that. I'm continually listening because I'm looking for a way to speed test YouTube ads. Well, the benefit of Facebook ads over all the other platforms, this is the number one benefit. Okay, it doesn't matter which market you're in, whether it's B2B or B2C, is the ability to rapidly speed test image ads. That's it. That in my opinion, that is the number one benefit of Facebook ads, is it enables you to rapidly test. I can launch 50 ads today, and it will take me maybe an hour or two. I'll come up with different angles, different headlines. I'll go into closers copy, go into writer.com. I'll figure out some stuff. Boom. Come up with some different image creatives. And believe it or not, my image creatives at the beginning are just a plain background with 2 colors. Better to have like two diagonal colors or circle in the middle and then a circle on the outside, or a little solid block color with a little wedge at the top, or even two horizontal colors. Believe it or not, those work. Or even a solid block color. Try it. Prove me wrong. Try those angles, like different statements and ideas, and you run them concurrently, and I'm telling you, you will get actual results. It's crazy. This is how you speed test your ideas. Before you test the creative, the image component of the creative, once you've figured out something that actually works, then you turn around and you test out the image. Once you've done that, then you test out the body copy. Once you've done that, then you test out the headline properly. Once you've done that, then you start testing the landing page. Once you've done that, then you start testing other components of the funnel. And it goes on and it goes on. And it comes back to what Ankit was talking about, which is, do you start with the offer? And the answer is no, you don't. You don't start with the offer. The offer is as important as the offer is. You start out with an open-ended approach. Okay, this is going back to Bruce Corson. How do I know that the problem that you're telling me is the right problem, right? So if somebody comes to me with a product, say, sell my product, I go, well, how do I know that that product is the right product? How do I know it's addressed at the right audience? I don't, is the answer, right? And so this is like, you might be spinning your wheels with different clients and not getting the results that you want. And it could be because of this. It could be because you're trying to market a product that's going to fail from the get-go because it's set up for the wrong person with the wrong problem. This comes back to Eugene Schwartz, another book recommendation. Eugene Schwartz, Breakthrough Advertising. You might be able to find secondhand copies of that for cheap somewhere. But if you try and buy it on Amazon, it's like $1,000. It's a really expensive book. But in my opinion, it's still one of the most important marketing books there are. And he says in the beginning chapter, you can't create desire for a product. You can only redirect, slightly deflect desire that already exists out there in the market towards your product. You can only slightly deflect it. You can't make them do a U-turn. Okay, so this is Breakthrough Advertising, Eugene Schwartz. If you find a cheap copy, grab it. If you find a copy for less than $100, grab it. It's really one of the best tomes on marketing you can get. Alrighty, so that's Facebook ads, and Joe saying I don't recommend tools for yet. It is good for Google and Facebook ads. Use Google ads and Facebook ad platform. Yes. Okay. Yeah, I agree with you, Joe. I 100% agree with you. I actually don't think you need many tools. I'll tell you the one tool that I am bullish on though is that Marpipe. If you've got Marpipe in your stack, that's definitely a good way to speed test image creators on Facebook, and it does interact with other platforms as well. That would be the one of the few exceptions that I talk about. Joe and I had a call the other day, and I video called him, and he made me look at his ear for a good hour. I thought that was quite rude of him, but I'm not quite used to some of the rituals that some of the folks in his city get up to. Okay. Okay. So I want to talk about. We've talked about what is it? What are those top businesses called again? Not mid cap. They're called enterprise. So one of the other things that's happened with tracking, back to data. I know this is kind of a divergent. Joe is trolling me in the comments, making me laugh. One of the other things that enterprise businesses do, and they do extremely well, is they get their reporting done right. So what do I mean by reporting? They don't rely on the conversion stats in Facebook or Google. They collect their own data and they assemble it themselves, usually. They might use a tool. It has some tools that you might be willing to play with if you're not willing to assemble your own. So we use Google Tag Manager Browser, Google Tag Manager Server for the data collection when it comes to web and mobile applications. And we then join the data together in BigQuery and then run queries on that and then display dashboards in the free Data Studio. And BigQuery, even though it's an enterprise product, believe it or not, it'll unless you're driving bazillions and gazillions of clicks a month, it'll literally cost you like $1 or $2 a month. It's so cheap, it's ridiculous. I cannot believe that product is available. Unbelievable, but not easy, and definitely not a big enough product to set up. There are other products out there that you may want to look at. Wicked Reports is one, Hyros is another, Segmetrics is another one, and Supermetrics is a favorite of a number of people. Because it just makes it so easy to pipe data from one place to another and make up really easy to understand dashboards. Having said that, we
Ankit
did have the
Ankit has a comment. He's saying, yes, I've always said this. The Facebook API keeps changing. Most importantly, relay things are always broken, even on Facebook Ads Manager itself. Always recommend to spend some time and learn these immense advantage and benefits.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, one day maybe I'll do a tutorial on how to set up Google Tag Manager and Google Analytics properly, because honestly, if you can do that properly, you will actually understand your data and get actually good insights out of it, rather than the rubbish. It's like, oh, what is bounce rate going to do for me? Go in there, have a look at bounce rate. It does nothing. I can't make any decisions based off that, apart from knowing whether or not my content is relatively engaging or not. But otherwise, not much use. So yeah,
very engaging. And Ronnie is saying Clipfolio also can help high-level dashboards connected via API to Google and Facebook.
Clipfolio. Let's have a look at that one. So Clipfolio is one that Ruhani's saying. So there's a number of good ones. Interesting. I haven't heard this Clipfolio one. That looks pretty interesting. Okay, cool. We'll have a look at that later. But if you guys didn't jump on it yet, I don't even know if it's still available, but it's called Guyana. G-Y-A-N-A.
It's not available anymore. It's not available. I think they might be running into, I'm not sure. I saw a post the other day. I mean, I was looking at some of my data because I have a significant amount of data in my HubSpot. I have collected over a period of 4.5 years, and I was able to connect it to Guyana. I was looking at it, but I mean, it is pretty good. I actually regret not stacking it, but somebody the other day. What's that?
What did you? You didn't stack it. You just got the one license, yeah?
Yes. I mean, I probably could reach out to the founder.
So it's actually good, yeah? Is it good?
It's good. I mean, it's pretty good. Like, I have, like for the value, it's amazing, right? I mean, and we just released a 2.0 version, so I mean, we can do a session on that separately with the founder. But I mean, they're a very talented bunch of people, I would say.
Right. Oh, that's a bummer. And I was really pumping it when they came through. I really was pumping it for a good few weeks. Remember that?
Yes.
I didn't get it. So
Joe refunded it. He's saying.
Joe refunded it. Go on.
Yeah.
That's good, Joe.
Yeah.
I mean, it's people can make up their own decisions. I didn't get it, and the reason I didn't get it is because I do this stuff in BigQuery. Right, I've already said this to you guys, and go and check out BigQuery. If you can make that work, great, good on you. And play around with Data Studio. Honestly, BigQuery is amazing. It's amazing, and the reason I didn't get Guyana is, for me, it's not a scalable solution. Right, even if I stacked it, so let's say my business blows up, then I've got to start paying anyway, and I'd rather have control over those moving parts. That's why I don't do it. But not everybody has my abilities to use Google Tag Manager, Google Tag Manager Server, Google Cloud Platform, do some JavaScript coding, and on and on and on. Right, so you don't have the same resources as me. But if you're running a small business, man, Guyana is just like it's a no-brainer. Anyway, so Rohani's is saying how they used Clipfolio. When we launched a product a few years back, marketing and product, we were tracking live Facebook ads, Google, and at the same time, onboarding metrics for the product. I displayed the metrics day by day via Clipfolio, via TV. I'm not sure what TV is. Like conversion rates, Google, Facebook, as well as onboarding. So here's one of the things that I have to say about any of these tools, right? Unless you set up those tools properly and you have somebody like Ruhani to set them up properly, to pipe everything together, that's the key. You have to get good, reliable data and you have to connect it up properly. And then you have to guard your brain against information overload by creating dashboards that tell you just the metrics. Remember, we talked about just the 3 metrics. You want to narrow that shit down to just the fewest moving parts, possible, that you have evidence that those things actually steer your business. In my opinion, there's no point tracking 50 different metrics. That, in my opinion, is an absolute waste of your time. You got better things to be doing. You can leave that to an assistant or somebody else, but your focus, if you're growing, if your role is to be the person who's growing the thing, or you're growing your own thing, you must know what those 3 things are, and preferably one thing. Like I said, one thing.
Who was that Google Tag Manager gentleman who you had recommended the blog?
Simo Ahava, Simo Ahava, Ahava.
Yes, I have it. Yes.
Joe's saying he wants me to handle his Google Tag Manager stuff. Ask me, Joe. I'll send you some stuff, bro. All good. Yeah. Anyway, you guys got any comments? I mean, that's the gist of it, really. I mean, check out that Annette Pren. I've been told, I haven't read his stuff yet. I'm going to dig into it. But you need to kind of like have a framework for figuring out what needs to be looked at, right? Where does your eyeballs need to be? And then you need to be able to get good, clean data. You need to be able to get it to a place where you can manipulate it. And then you need to be able to extract out data that tells you what's going on with those few things. You don't want to be tracking everything. Everything's a waste of time. You just get overloaded with stuff that hurts your brain, right? We're here to make money. We're here to grow our business. We're here to create amazing things in the world. The way you do it is you narrow your focus on just the things that are turning the dial for you. And this comes back to my whole kind of like philosophy now. You know, why do 50 different things when 50 different things do SFA? You know, not much. You know, that's why I don't do much optimization on YouTube now. I know that YouTube is smart enough to know if my video is valuable or not. I just put it up and I just wait for the views to come in. And if it's good, all good. I'm telling you a funny story. There was a video I put up and I forgot to put any links back to my site. And so the guys were zooming in on my URL bar to figure out what site I was on. Then they went to the wrong site because there's another site that shares the same name as mine. And then they went back and figured out that my site has .nz at the end. Then they went to there and then they found the booking button and scheduled calls with me. And I was getting regular leads from that, you know, kind of crazy, really. Make people go through a torturous process, you know. So all of this is kind of like anti-funnel stuff, totally reverse to what most people will tell you to do with marketing. But my focus is on, you know, I want to grow my stuff, man. I don't want to be sitting there spinning dials all day. I want to actually grow real stuff, and I want it to be as simple as possible. And I know that what I do is not simple. I do some extremely complex stuff with data piping. But at the end of the day, what I'm trying to do is narrow it down so that I can make informed, evidence-based decisions, intelligent decisions based on reliable data that's as close to the source as possible. So if you're tracking Google ads and Facebook ads, you want to know what the cost is, you get it straight out of the API. If you want to know what your e-commerce sales are, you get it straight out of WooCommerce, or you get it straight out of Shopify, or you get it straight out of Stripe. What you don't do is you don't trust the metrics that are coming to you by a pixel that's placed on your site. That stuff is backup data, and it still has some really, really useful data with it. But what you have to do is you have to get as close to the source as possible, whether it's your CRM, your e-commerce platform, or your advertising platform. You have to be able to join that data together in a platform where you can control it. This is my problem with Wicked Reports and Hyros and Segmetrics and those, is that you don't own those platforms, okay? And I know you don't own Google Cloud Platform either. But what I love about Google Cloud Platform is that I can put my data in a database in a querying database that I control, and it costs me next to nothing per month to run that thing. Yes, I have to pay myself or pay someone else to do that for me, but at least I can control it, right? And so you're saying that, Nilesh, with your thing, you now have bazillions of terabytes of data on HubSpot. And now you need to get that data out of HubSpot because you no longer want to use HubSpot. You want to use CloseM or Close.com or some other system. Well, too bad,
Yeah, and it's interesting because to move some of the data, I've actually looked at the 5-tran connectors which they offer, and it's actually pretty expensive to move data using 5-tran connectors. And Gyana is actually including that, Gyana is including that.
That was crazy, dude. When I heard that, I was like, everybody get Gyana. Everyone get Gyana before they figure out that they're giving too good of a deal.
Yeah, because moving data from one CRM to another CRM is quite challenging. It's not an easy task. I mean, of course, if you have just phone numbers and names of people, it's okay. But we have like years of phone calls and emails and history and everything which needs to be aligned to that particular customer, every single interaction which happened with that customer. So to do that, you need to use something much more powerful.
Yeah. Anyway, guys, I hope I haven't overloaded you, but if you're left with one thing today, that you have to be able to make evidence-based decisions that are based on real evidence that's as close to the source as possible that you can trust, and you want to find those handful of factors that are driving your thing and focus all your attention on those things. That's how you grow your thing. I know I used thing about 5 times in the same sentence. I apologize. All right. If you guys got any other questions, we're going to wrap this up, I think, unless you got anything else to say.
I mean, like great chat. And for so being very honest, great chat. And a lot of learning for me, right? Because again, I have a completely different method of selling, and my whole thing is not around, like, I don't sell through ads, right? Like, because we are selling services.
Hold on. I guess I mentioned the ads thing because a lot of people in here are using ads. My approach of narrowing down to the 3 things or the one thing does not need you to use ads, right? But it does need you to collect accurate data. You must be able to collect accurate data, regardless of whether you're doing ads or not. Sorry, Nilesh, carry on.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, my whole sales philosophy has been different because of the type of product you're selling. So, of course, it depends on exactly what you're selling. So, I mean, the kind of services which you are selling, I mean, nobody's going to buy or even get engaged in terms of going on a Facebook ad or so it is a very, very high touch. You actually talk to the person, you get on a WebEx, and then the whole conversation starts. It's a little bit different, but it's been a great learning experience today for me, for sure. Yes.
Yeah, and just to answer Joe's question, yes, I concur with I concur what Casey has just said. Forget all of those tools, whether it's, and this is nothing against Scalify. I haven't used Scalify, so I apologize, Scalify owner, because I haven't used it also. I apologize. It's nothing against Scalify. I haven't used it, so I can't comment on it. But yes, forget all of those tools. Scalify, Aginid, Magix, whatever. You don't actually need them. They're not going to help you. Well, they might help you a little bit. They might help you because you can just click a button and things go up. But ultimately, long term, they're not going to help you because you're putting your focus in the wrong place, is what I'm saying. The focus with those tools is not going to put your mind on for instance, if you want success with Facebook ads, like I said, 95% of your success is with the creative. What do you need for creative? I've already told you, you don't need to worry about images because that's just an extra level of complexity. Guys, we don't have to overcomplicate this. Just use two colors that clash and then put a message in there. Done. You can now test your message. Once you find a winning message, now you can turn around and test the actual images themselves. And what you might be surprised to learn is the images that you thought were going to work don't actually work as well when you are going in with an open mind. I mean, that's a topic for another day, and I'm not that great at it. I really struggle with creating creatives, but um, 95% of your success is there. So if it's there, then why do you bother with all of the paid tools like these other things that Casey Wong is talking about?
Yes. Joe saying movie recommendation. Catch Me If You Can, Win Pirini.
I love that. I love that, man. I love that movie. It's such an awesome movie. I'm gonna watch that again. Actually, I was planning on watching that movie this week. Funny you should mention that, Wilson. Honestly, was that Wilson that said that? Oh, Joe said that.
Joe.
Said that. I'm actually gonna. Oh, yeah, you and I were talking about this just the other day, Joe. That's right. Yeah, no wonder you said it. I thought this is kind of weird, but yeah, I've been thinking about that since you put that in my brain. You know what the other movie is? Is that Inception? You incepted something into my brain.
So, to sum it up, what we just discussed, I mean, from a Facebook perspective, it is looking at that particular metric in terms of engagement. And what we have essentially done is, in our community, in Facebook, we were asking people that, hey, don't post the same thing again and again. You're posting the same thing every single day, every day of the week. I mean, it does not make sense, right? But of course, I understand for some people, they do want to continue posting, and that has allowed us to create a separate community where people can go crazy about posting. And
they can spam each other all day long.
Yes, I mean, it's not spam. I mean, you still want to control it and make sure that everybody gets a good value out of it. There is a place for that, but it's also allowed us to change that metric and get on things where Facebook is not flagging some of those posts, makes the community a lot more valuable, and allows people to engage more. So, I mean, that's where we wanted it to be, and that's where we are today. So,
Yeah. No, good point. I give you credit, Nilesh. I mean, it's not easy doing what you did. You copped a lot of flack for that. Quite honestly, you quite copped a lot of flack for being the bad guy who is, hey, do you think that you could post something else other than the list of 300 products that you have again for the fifth time this week? Could you please,
and I mean, it's mostly only was some people who were taking the community for hostage,
5 or 10 people, really. I mean, everyone
again and again, and now it's given us a cleaner environment. Everybody's happier. That's the way to go, right? And we're gonna do more valuable content in the community, see more engagement, and there is a lot for everyone to get a value from, right? From basically everything we are doing. So, I mean,
100%.
Yes, absolutely. And we're starting to see that, right? We're starting to see, more people joining in with diverse backgrounds, specifically around WordPress, or could be related to Facebook ads groups, or digital nomads, or digital agencies, admins, consultants, right? We're seeing the type of people joining had changed quite a bit into our community. So yes, was it worth all that? Absolutely worth it. I would rather see more meaningful, interesting, and knowledgeable posts every single day in where everybody can learn, rather than seeing the same post again and again. Thinking, oh my God, like, what? Are you not getting it? Nobody's buying it because you've priced it too high. But no offense to anybody. If they want, they can do that in the next community which we have. So, yes.
Yeah, cool. I mean, that's part of what we do. We sell our stuff and we buy other stuff. I mean, that's all good. Whatever. Not criticizing that.
Absolutely.
Ankit is saying too many tools and information causes analysis paralysis. The biggest advice I can give is take action and just do it. Just do it. And I really love that. I love that. I 100% say that this is true. Honestly, if there's not enough energy, right, in the basic idea and the basic concept of what you're doing without having to do all of the overthinking and the complicated this and the complicated that, if the basic idea of what you're doing is not showing some signal that it's working, then why bother? Why bother carrying on doing that thing? Just move on to the next thing and test the next thing and test the next thing, like Ankit's saying. It's honestly an epiphany. If something's not working and you've put in like a year worth of work, you've optimized everything and you've gotten like a 5% lift, I'm sorry, but it's honestly been a waste of time. You should be seeing like 300% lift here and 1,000% lift there. I know that sounds crazy, but that's honestly the kind of result you should be looking for. And I'm not saying across your entire business. That's nonsense. That does happen. That comes from stringing together a number of these micro efforts that have these crazy lifts, right? They make a small impact on your business, but you're seeing a massive localized effect. That's what you're looking for, right? And then you're going to string that together with something else, and then something else, and then something else. Like Ankit says, you just rinse and repeat. Test a whole bunch of ideas. Don't test a whole bunch of same ideas. Test a whole bunch of very different ideas. That's how you turn up new value, right? You don't want to. You still want to test 5,000 variations of the same sentence. You want to test vastly different ideas and see which ones are catching people's attention. All right.
I think we're good for today. We might actually have a session tomorrow with Nice Reply, but they haven't got back to me. Actually, do you want to? Have you seen Nice Reply?
No, I haven't. No. Nice reply.
Sorry, guys, we still have 5 minutes. Or maybe we're going to talk for another 15. Let's see.
Nice reply. Surveys. Okay, cool. NPS and all that stuff. Good stuff. Okay, cool.
Do you know? Have you used
net present score or net?
Yeah. Have you used it?
I've used other net NPS tools before. No, I haven't used it. Looks interesting though.
Yeah. Let me
use. Cool.
Let me just talk about it very quickly.
Yep.
1 second here.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks everyone for joining us, by the way.
Oh, what's going on?
It's a pretty well established tool.
No. 1 second.
Huh? I reckon is this nicereply.com? They've been in business for over 10 years.
Well, they have been in business for over 10 years. Absolutely.
Wow. And they've got some pretty big customers. I see.
There we go. Wow. Do you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about it briefly here. So, yeah, I mean, I was actually in the middle of completing a video for my second part of the video, but really, what Nice Reply is doing very well is your CSAT, CES, and NPS. Beyond that, it's not doing any type of other feedback. So any type of metric you want to get out on these scales is doing it really well. And it integrates with some very, very cool applications which would use in a support desk, help desk kind of scenario. But again, in compared to Feedier or Query, I mean, there are a lot of limitations in terms of. Let me show you my Feedier account. Oh, 1 second. What's going on here? So Feedier has very robust reporting and stuff. I mean, with Nice Reply, the reporting seems to be limited as well. I don't know if they have, additional reporting features, and they are not, they haven't made those fully available in the AppSumo plan. But I mean, seems to be very limited in terms of its reporting capabilities. And but other than that, I mean, if you want to gather any of these metrics here, like you can integrate it very well, like quickly into your email signature every time your agent has had an interaction with your customer, right? Like, so say for example, NPS, right? So somebody's using your product, based on where they are in your product, as long as your product hasn't crashed or something. I mean, you don't want to get NPS feedback when your product has crashed. Probably you want to, but still, I mean, you would end up with a customer who's not happy, and that would be your detractor kind of thing, right? So So in the contact center, all these CX managers are looking for NPS. Basically what it is it will allow you to measure. Let me show you a quick let me 1 second.
Looks pretty good.
Yeah. So what they will allow you to do is let's skip this. So you can add this into your signature, I mean, very quickly, and then you can go ahead and give sort of like a rating from 1 to 10. So I think 1 to 6 is your detractors, 7 to 8 is your passives, which don't really count for anything, and then 9 and 10, anybody who gives you 9 and 10 rating are your promoters. So basically, you are going to get an NPS score of promoters, percentage of promoters minus percentage of detractors. And that's how you calculate NPS. Very easy, very simple metric, and it allows you to do well. But if you are looking at anything which is more complex to collect feedback, then Nice Reply is not the tool. So it's really focused on providing that particular CSAT, CES, and NPS. Beyond that, there's not much. Yeah.
Looks interesting. Interesting.
Okay. With that, I think we can close it off. And thanks everyone who joined. So thank you, and Wynne, great session. I mean, I wish I could talk a little bit more about it, but that's not my topic of expertise. So I'm glad we have you. So,
all right.
Yes.
All right, guys.
All right. Okay.
Good one. See you guys soon. Tomorrow, probably.
Hang on. Let's play the music first. All right. Okay. Thank you. Thanks a lot, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.